160, June 2026. We like to open this with an acknowledgement of country. The Melbourne AWS user group acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung and Bunurong peoples, Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and recognise their ongoing connection to the land. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today or watching on our stream. We run these events with a code of conduct. The short version is on there. Shorter version is like be nice to each other. If you want to see the full version, you can get that on our website. If you see or experience anything that does not adhere to this code of conduct, you can come talk to myself, Matt at the back, or Rob. Or if you wish to do so anonymously, at that link there is an anonymous feedback form. So but hope no one ever has to use that. So yeah, be good to each other and we'll have a great event. You can find us on various web options. There's our website. We are on LinkedIn and we are on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching YouTube, you know where to find us. But if you are here now and want to either look back or you can't attend at some stage, we stream at youtube.com/@AWSMelb. So our agenda for tonight is the introductions that I am doing now. We'll follow that with a What's New section. And then we have a brand new speaker for us. So give her your attention when she comes up. And yeah, so Anyana will be talking to us about RAG riches. And then we'll have Bharat, who will be following up. And Bharat was one of our original speakers. So for anyone that's interested, and I think one thing that I am quite proud of, last month we had a first-time speaker. We've got Anyana this time. And yeah, we've had quite a lot of people that have started their speaking journey here at this user group. So it's a great place if you're ever interested. And then we will follow up with Matt Merrill. He'll be talking to us about how he prepares the What's New segment. And that's something as well that we will be happy to open up. If you guys want to, try your hand at presenting, you can come and do the What's New segment. It's a good way to learn how to talk and present and get comfortable without necessarily having to come up with your own content. So yeah, you can have a look at that and talk afterwards. We finish up with a marketplace. Now, we normally do that asking people who's hiring rather than who wants a job, because if your boss happens to be watching on the live stream, there may be some interesting questions on Thursday morning. And then we'll wrap up about 8 o'clock. So if you are watching on the live stream, you can ask questions either in the Hash Melbourne channel on our Slack or straight in the YouTube chat. And I should say as well, any of those questions, Rob will let us know, and we'll read those out to the presenter. Now, we can't do these events and put on the food and drinks without our sponsors, and a big thank you to our gold sponsor, Mantel Group. We also thank our silver sponsor, Sevo, have provided several people for the audience tonight. And also to a big thank you to NAB, who gave us the venue. Without having a place to hold these things, it makes it pretty difficult. The AV in the park is not. All right, as I said, we have a Slack channel, so you can find our Slack there. We have various channels there with various levels of frequency. So, but if you have anything, ask a question, there'll be someone who will jump on and answer. If you want to get involved, one of the big things that we always look for is speakers, always difficult to get. So if you are interested, come and talk to us, or there's a, on the website, you can put in your submissions from there. So always looking for that. If you're interested in sponsoring, you can talk to Matt. And the other thing that we look for are volunteers. So if you'd like to help, just run this during the events, or even during the discussion for the What's New, come see us and we'll be happy to have you. There is a volunteers channel on our Slack. All right, there are a few things that are coming up. It's still a little ways off now, but tickets are open for AWS reInvent. This is AWS's really big conference in Las Vegas. It's massive. Last year there was like about 60,000 people, all sorts of streams. It's wild and crazy time. So I think right now there are discount tickets, and then the discount goes away as it gets closer to the event. So really worthwhile if you ever get a chance. A bit closer to home, we have AWS Community Day Australia. This is our own event put on by the community for the community. Rob can take away my picture. We can do it. So we have the tickets there. Tickets are only about $20, so very reasonable. And if you would like to talk, there's the CFP link, so you can check out that QR code and put in your submission. It's a great day. Nice time. Head up to Brizzy for a weekend. It's on a Friday, so take the extra time. Take your other half. Good excuse for going up to the conference and giving them a weekend away as well. Right, even closer to home, we have the AWS Programming and Tools Meetup. So that's on Wednesday, the 8th of July. And that's Intro to RAG with Amazon Agent Core. So Programming and Tools is a hands-on event. So bring your laptops and have a play. That's always a fun event. Women in Cloud are having theirs on the 4th of June. 4th of June? No. That's already gone. We'll talk to Hazra up in the back there. She's talking at the next one. What's the date? 2nd of July. So, but have a look on meetup.com and you'll get the sign-up details there if you're interested. The AWS Melbourne Well Architected is on the 22nd of July, and that's at the AWS offices. And what's new? Matt.
That was sneaky of me. Okay, so what's new in AWS for the month of June? Busy month this month because obviously we had mini reInvent in New York. New York Summit now appears to be their midpoint, let's announce everything that can't wait until November event. So we've had a lot of stuff come out. No surprise to anybody that most of it was AI or AI adjacent stuff. But a little bit close to home, new EC2 instances in Sydney, yay. Bedrock guardrails, automated reasoning checks in Sydney, yay. For those of you who are doing AI stuff in Southeast too. In databases, a little bit weird in the database world. You've got Vercel workloads or V0 workloads that you want to integrate into your AWS environment. You can now do that natively. Not entirely sure why or how or what you'd be doing if you wanted to do that, but you can. So you can now run various AWS database versions on Vercel in AWS regions. So kind of a roundabout way. Also on the weird AWS but not really AWS stuff is Oracle databases on AWS now supports autonomous AI serverless functions. So the Oracle on AWS, I'm an Oracle workload, Oracle offering, but on AWS infrastructure gets a little bit more interesting for those of you who are running Oracle workloads because everybody knows how much. RDS for SQL Server, maximum size and performance of their GP3 volumes. So for those of us still running Microsoft workloads, because we haven't managed to get them going yet, we've now got more options without having to dive into the more expensive disk options. Moving into compute. Compute Optimizer was a big one. More options around tracking data, tracking costs, coming up with recommendations, idle recommendations, EBS volume performance recommendations, all of those sorts of things. The moral of the story is if you are not periodically running Compute Optimizer across your environment, I recommend that you do. Even if you just click ops it for the time being, just throw it across the environment, see what it recommends. You never know, you're potentially sitting on a whole bunch of savings for minimal effort. So nice way to go back to the boss and say, hey, I've just found a way to save X number of dollars per year. I'll take 30% of that as a pay rise, thanks. Give and take. And everybody's favorite service, Amazon Lightsail. No? Not a lot of Lightsail users. Woo! You can tell people in this room don't use OpenClaw. That's okay. Is now available in additional regions, including our good friends over the pond in New Zealand. So they can now officially run their Lightsail workloads. On the other end of the spectrum, for those who are pushing their compute to the limit, Parallel Computing Service now supports the Ultra server range and the GB200s and GB300 GPU ranges. So for you doing your parallel compute, your large scale, because of course we're all training large language models and spending tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a month on compute. Yeah, you've now got more options to do that. Yay. Moving into containers, lot of stuff came out in New York around EKS. They've uplifted to 1.36. Now got more access to Inferentia and the Terranium chips. Again, for those of us who are training AI models. I hope everybody's not completely sick of AI yet, because it looks like the rest of the year is going the same way that the first half of the year has. Fargate now supports containers requiring up to 32 cores. We've taken the idea of small manageable compute workloads and just turn them into monoliths. Not entirely sure why we as an industry continue to keep on shooting ourselves in the foot, but we do, and now you can do it on Fargate. Local clusters on outposts around EKS, ECS instance store, or more, because again, outposts is getting a lot more love from the managed service world, and then more options around the control plane egress. For those of you running EKS and then want to integrate that back into the rest of your multi-cloud or on-prem Kubernetes environment. not going to spend a lot of time on the machine learning stuff other than to say Amazon Quick, which is now the Amazon Quick Suite, which is the successor to Q Business, but the replacement of Quick Site. So yeah, that makes all perfect sense. Everybody followed that one. Is getting a lot of love, right? So this is their Claude desktop, OpenAI desktop, competitor. It hooks into your models. It hooks into interfaces into all of your systems, all of your endpoints, your data sets, and you can run reports, get it to analyze your data, do all of those fun bits and bobs. They're rolling it out, getting it access to a lot more software packages. So you're now, I think recently they've now expanded it to Canva and a bunch of other tools so that it can drive and do fancy things with all of that sort of stuff. You'll see a lot of, so it's Adobe, Figma, WhatsApp, all of those sorts of bits. So you'll see a lot of announcements over the next 6 months as they push Quick more and more. A bunch of Agent Core stuff, and then of course we got the OpenAI models, and then we got Fable, and then we lost Fable because that's where we are in the world at the moment. So yeah, bunch of stuff in AI world. We're going to continue to see a bunch of that. In networking land, AWS Interconnect, it's a multi-cloud offering that now offers a free 500 megabit tier. For those of you wanting to do your multi-cloud, you now have some real options around interconnections between cloud environments. This is an interesting one because it also ties into an announcement later on in the story around how you can now provision an AWS service and get free ingress and egress, which is an interesting thing because I never thought I'd see the day where AWS doesn't charge you for bandwidth. Route 53 Resolver DNS now has Palo Alto advanced DNS support. That's in preview, and Network Firewall got some default drop rule additions for those of you playing in that world. In serverless, SES got some love, Step Functions got some love, surprise, surprise, AI related. Lambda managed instances expanded to additional regions. Again, our friends over the pond got access to that one. And the big announcement that's been all over LinkedIn this week is the launch of Lambda Micro VMs, which is just another way that you can run AI agents, because we already had 4 and now we have 5. Because, standards. Security world, Cognito got a lot of love, which is interesting. That's a service that sort of goes quiet for a year at a time and then gets a bunch of announcements for like a month or two and then goes quiet for another year. The big one for those of you playing Cognito in any scale is the fact that it now supports multi-region replication. For those of you who haven't played with Cognito, one of its biggest problems is the fact that it stores your identity data in a single region. So if you've got a global customer base and then you need to start thinking about GDPR or things like that, you've got some real problems around how you manage that and how you do, speed and all of those sorts of things. So replication is now going to give us some more options as to how we can replicate some of the data and then encrypt other data. And there's a whole range of bits and pieces there. Secrets Manager got some more stuff for the agent toolkit. There were a few announcements in there around separate quotas for AWS accounts and applications in Identity Center. This was one of those ones where you sort of sit there and go, what are people doing with their AWS environments? There was a limit where in Identity Center you could only have a maximum of 7,000 accounts or applications available to a user, because we all run 7,000 accounts in our organization. They have now made those separate quotas. So you can now have 7,000 accounts and 7,000 applications available. And they are both quota request upgradable. So you can now crack 10,000 accounts in your org if you really want to. I don't know why you would, but more computer optimizer around EBS volumes. S3 vectors got query reduction, because obviously that's where we're all storing our training data and our RAG data, and some annotation. So in addition to metadata, data, and tags, we now have annotation ability for our object stores so that the AI has more context around what it's doing. Yay! Wrapping it out with dev and ops. Command line interface now has support for the agent toolkit, which means agents find it easier to talk to the AWS CLI so that they can do things outside of infrastructure as code, which is, of course, exactly what we want. The MCP server, which they unified last month, now supports cross-account and cross-role access, so you can give it access to all of those 10,000 accounts that you just provisioned. Awesome. Cost Explorer got more power. FinOps agent is now available in preview, so pair that with Compute Optimizer and you can start seeing where AWS are going with data-driven decision making and all of those sorts of things. CloudWatch introduced log analytics for unified log analysis. Again, we can see that that's going to be the next step that they're going to do for an observability agent. And then the DevOps agent got release management capability. So now not only can it see and watch and make recommendations, but it can now actually go and implement set recommendations. So all of us DevOps people can now be replaced by an agent. Yeah, it's not going to end badly at all. Other stuff, fun stuff. The big ones here. The AWS Management Console now works without internet connectivity. Yeah, stop and process that statement for a minute. Stop and process. You have the ability to provision a private access instance of the Management Console, which you can now access via internal routing. So you don't actually need to traverse the internet to get access to your AWS control plane. I can see a lot of regulated industries and regulated customers jumping at this one. It's a lot of complexity, but hey, if you've always been sitting there going, man, I wish I couldn't access this over the internet, now you can. And then the interesting one, GameLift servers. Amazon's doing a big push in the world of online gaming and multiplayer gaming. GameLift have always been sort of that service off on the side that enable you to provision all the back-end services that you're going to need for your next, MMO, RPG, whatever it is. But obviously, in the world of AWS, bandwidth is the #1 killer. GameLift servers, as long as you're provisioning the new V5 instances, free ingress and ingress traffic, unmetered. So when I saw this one the other day, I was wondering how hard it would be to embed a NAT gateway into a multiplayer online game so that I could get free internet access through that. I'm sure that's not yet. Anyway, interesting, puzzle for somebody to launch a Claude instance against to see if they can, turn that into something. Amazon Blocks, open source framework for composing application backends in AWS. That's another way. Another tool that we can add to our SAM and our CDK and our CloudFormation and all of those sorts of fun things. So standardization is reigning supreme in the world of AWS. And that is it. I will be back later on to tell you how I actually create all of those things.
Hi everyone, so I'm Sanjana. Like Jason said, I've been coming to the meetup itself for about a year now, and I'm glad to kick off my first talk here in Melbourne at this particular meetup as well. I recently graduated from RMIT with my master's in data science. I have also been working as a business intelligence developer with Compass Group. I started my AWS learning journey itself about a year back and got about 3 certs to get the basics of it, and I have I put that to proper use through my industry project with Medibank, where I had the opportunity to work on AI-driven market intelligence pipeline, which learnings I'm really keen on sharing with all of you here today. So I'll first start off with the problem that was presented to us. So in the PHI industry, in this case Medibank, there's one person that's assigned to go through all of the reports that are sent out either monthly or tri-monthly or yearly. It includes, this is actually the shortened list of what we were provided, but it briefly includes like ABS reports, APRA stats, ASX releases, all of the competitor activity that they need to be on top of, media releases, and also the social sentiment. So one person, or at most two people, have to spend about 5 to 10 hours every single week or 2 weeks once to gather all of this and then get the insights from it so that they can actually put into action. And in the era of AI, this doesn't seem very efficient, does it? So we thought of what if there's a way to automate all of it. To put some numbers about it, there's about 50 plus sources that they need to monitor, 5 plus hours every single week, and there were 0 automated tools in place, which doesn't really sound right to the current era that we are all living in. And hence, we came up with a fully automated pipeline that turns all of this raw data into a polished weekly briefing with 0 manual effort by anyone that could be putting their time into actually making all of these insights work for them. So we first start off with scraping all of those data that they need for the business to actually make action on. And then we store it on Amazon S3, and then we use Bedrock knowledge base, which I'll be showing further down. And then we synthesize all of this data from about 50 plus sources into a manual weekly briefing, which is then delivered to all of the internal stakeholders via Amazon SES. So to give a brief outline on what the scope was, we first had to scrape all of the macroeconomic data. Now, this is the data that the PHI industry needs to be on top of literally every week. They need to know about the inflation rates or all of the general economic factors that they need to know to make efficient decisions. And then they drill down to PHI industry specific information, such as all of the compliance documents that they need to be following and just general criteria from the government that they need to be on top of. And then they have to look at client specific information. In this case, the client itself was Medibank, so they need to be top of how Medibank is performing, how their products are being received by the customers and all of that. And then they have to look at, obviously, the customers, how their sentiments are relating to if they're actually getting to the right customers with the right plans. In order to make all of this 4 intelligence tiers into a proper briefing, we used RAG using Amazon Bedrock, which was a lifesaver for our students because there were several student projects that were happening at the uni, and it was a very stark contrast for us because until like the 3rd semester, we were just taught to fine tune or build our own RAG applications. But this is where we realized that that's not actually how it works in the production world in companies. You don't really have to sit down and build your own RAG model. You can just use whatever is provided by enterprises like AWS or Azure. Yeah. So we used the RAG service that was provided by AWS itself, and then we used Claude Sonnet 4.5, since not just because it's a student project and cost constraints, but in general, Claude Sonnet 4.5 kind of covered all of the needs of the project itself. So it did all of the heavy lifting, and we were actually able to see how AI-assisted coding kind of works in the production environment as well. So it was just like a structured prompt that was given via a Lambda function to Claude to make sure all of the relevant information from these 4 tiers is then generated into a proper briefing to be sent. So Claude did almost all of the heavy lifting for us. We also made sure that there were proper guidelines in place so that it does not hallucinate any information that is not actually given in the verified websites, and we made sure to attach those links as well. So visually, this is how it actually worked for us. Through general Python scripts, we scraped all of these websites and put them into S3, which was then synced into the using Amazon Bedrock knowledge base, wherein it converts all of these scripts that are in S3 into embedded vectors for it to understand internally. And then we used an AWS Lambda function, which is where we used Claude to connect to the knowledge base, and then it then queries all of these 4 tiers. So that and then to make it look pretty, because you don't expect internal stakeholders to read through paragraphs or text. So we made sure that it was more readable in a very succinct manner in a table, all the pretty details. And then it is delivered via Amazon SES to all of the internal stakeholders. So I've just attached screenshots from the EventBridge live schedules and the CloudWatch, because unfortunately I would love to show you the demo, but I do not have access to the account anymore. So did it actually work? Yeah, our stakeholders were very happy with it at Medibank, and it was approved like through a number of iterations and multiple feedback cycles, because we made a rookie mistake of having a lot of paragraph texts initially in the briefing. Nobody, even I did not read it at the first time. I was just happy I got the result. Nobody's going to read through paragraphs or text. So we converted it into like a table format that's very easy for them to read. So the pipeline is now live on AWS, and they are now moving it from the Uni AWS account to Medibank and all of that stuff that they are dealing with, not us. So the output quality, again, like I mentioned, it has evolved from a long prose kind of structure to a table format, which is much easier to read. But there is one known limitation for us where I mentioned that like once the vectors are converted, the text is converted into embedded vectors and it's in the knowledge base, the syncing is not yet automated. That's the only part of the entire pipeline that's not been automated yet. So that's a known limitation that we or they'll have to work on. This is just briefing. I'll be showing the full format in a minute. So from 0% automated process to 100%, I would say 98, because the knowledge sync is not automated yet. So someone's spending 5+ hours to just less than 20 minutes at this point from across 50+ data sources. And for future directions, we are looking at trends in anomaly detection over weeks, because at this point it only has like that particular week's data that's in the email. So in the future we'll maybe look at anomaly detection and so forth. And multi-week benchmarking as well. Like I said, it's just got that particular week's information at this point. So we'll be looking at how it's performed across like past weeks and so on in the advanced stages. An alert system, if there's something that very important or crucial that comes across in the email, that might be alerted in the future as well. And scraper validation and ASX annual reports. Like one huge problem that we ran into quite often while looking into the Python scripts for scraping was like several websites kind of block you from scraping their websites because of compliance and reasons. So we had to like look at different formats and different tools to scrape different websites. So that's something that can be monitored, and if they do change the format, then we'll be on top of it and make changes to the scripts before anything actually goes, so that it does not interfere with the weekly briefing being sent to the stakeholders themselves. I'll also, yeah, this is the final. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not. Yeah, just a minute. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I probably probably turn it around. Yeah, I was just trying to show the final email format, but yeah, that's okay. Any questions? Thank you. That's the end of the presentation. Any questions at all? Yeah.
Hang on a second.
Don't you think that the lambda is becoming a single point of failure in your architecture?
Yeah, at this point, we are just using like one lambda function. The other one was just to scrape the all the websites, but at this point, it's just one lambda function that does the most of the heavy lifting, that accesses Claude and then generates the email as well. but it kind of worked for an initial prototype, so we thought we'll keep it that way.
I have a question regarding the scraper
Yep.
that you used. Like I have research on this as well, and most of the like major platforms like LinkedIn and Seek and all those platforms, they specifically mention that you can't.
Yeah.
That violates their policy basically.
Yeah.
So
That's
how you're gonna manage those?
Yeah,
major-
we actually initially in the scoping, we did include LinkedIn because the stakeholder did want us to monitor it. But then again, we looked at the TO, like the terms of compliance and all of that, and LinkedIn's not been included in the public sentiment. We're only accessing sites that, you know, are quite liberal about it. Yeah, we haven't included that.
Just a simple. What was the vector store you were using
We use Titan text embeddings v2 for this because
for storage? Like where you were storing the vectors?
we were storing it in S3 because that was the cheaper option for us to do, since it's a student project as well, and it had just come up at that.
Right. Any further questions? Yep.
How consistent is the output of this one? Means if you run multiple times,
Yeah.
then you get the same results multiple times, or it's like because it's a reports which will be gonna
Yeah.
present into the bigger forum.
Yeah,
So
that's
how will you do
something that the stakeholders flagged as well, because most of the data here doesn't like change on a weekly basis. It either changes monthly or 3 months once. So that we have kind of it's actually in the future directions where we work to see if the data has already been published in the previous week. It won't be published in the following weeks.
Just a question. So you mentioned how, because it was like a student implementation, you kind of did things cost cutting,
Yeah.
sort of. Have they run it with more enterprise level models? So like a newer Claude Sonnet model, and did they notice a difference in the outputs?
We actually trialed 2 models. Initially, it was the 3.5, and then like in midst of the project progress, we had 4.5 come out. There was not really much of a difference between 3.5 and 4.5, and we also thought using Opus would be a bit of an overkill cost-wise, because like I said, Sonnet kind of covered all the bases for us. It was a report that they were happy with, so we kind of stopped at this point.
Cool. Any further questions? All right. Let's give Sonia a
Thank you.
big round of applause.
Thanks, Stacey.
Awesome. Cool. Good evening, everyone. First of all, congratulations, Sanjana. It was an amazing presentation. I think you did really well. I remember when I was here first time, I could not even speak. So awesome. Well done. So today I'll be talking about my recent experience with this particular project. And the learnings were pretty similar to what Sanjana's project had. So my key takeaway was, do not try to solve the problems which others have already solved for you. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away from today's session is the same. So before I jump into the presentation, a little bit about myself. I am AWS solution architect. I love solving the cloud problems. If I'm not solving the cloud problem, I'm making coffee at home. I love, making coffees at home, and I'm a new camper. If any camper in the audience, if you have any tips for me, please let me know. So yeah, I was just showing you, this is the coffee I made today morning, and that was my first camping setup. Okay, so imagine that you are running an airport, and your responsibility is that all the bags which are coming into the airport does not contain any harmless material. So there are two ways to go about it. You can have some kind of a system which scans the bag, right? You can, if you have a knowledge, you can go to the market, buy all the equipments, and build a machine by yourself. Or you can hire a company who can come and install the machine for you, and they will manage it, they will maintain it. Something breaks, they will come and fix it. So this organization had a very pretty similar problem. They were using the cloud, AWS cloud, quite extensively. They had hundreds of applications in cloud. And these applications were required to talk to some external system and download some kind of files. But they didn't want applications just to consume any file. There could be any virus, any malware. So they wanted these files to be scanned first before any application could consume that. So what they did, they built a control plane in the middle. Now, to build this control plane, they deployed EC2 instances, they bought an antivirus system. They added all the fancy stuff you have in AWS, like auto-scaling group, load balancer, whatever makes a good system, a highly available, scalable, and it was working perfectly fine, initially. And the way system used to work, any file, any application requires comes to this control plane first. This system scans the file. If the file is good, applications can consume it. If some virus is found or some malware is found, the file gets blocked here. So initially, this system was working perfectly fine because there were only few applications. They had only 100 files coming in a day. But as the organization was growing, they were onboarding more and more applications onto the AWS. And now they were getting 5,000 files in a day. And the system started showing problems. So the first problem they had was that it could not scan any file which were bigger than 2 GB. So it's like they built the scanning machine, but it could scan only certain size of bag. If the bag is bigger than certain size, then they had to do it manually. Another problem was that it did not scale really well because the files went from 100 files to 5,000 files, and the load was pretty unpredictable. Like they could get 0 files for a few days, and suddenly they might get 5,000 files in a couple of hours. So system was not able to scale with the unpredictable load. And it involved a lot of admin overhead because it was a hosted solution. They had to make sure the software which is deployed on top of it is up to the mark, up to the latest version. And this third-party software was coming up with a new version every couple of years. So they had to, upgrade the system every couple of years and spend a lot of effort and money into that. And it was not a straightforward upgrade. They had to rebuild the new EC2 instance, install the new version, migrate the scripts. So there was a lot of effort involved in just to keep the lights on. And over the period of time, customer customized the solution so much that vendor did not even support it anymore. So they had to go out and look for some other solution. So they were looking for a system which was very robust, very scalable, cost effective, and involved less admin overhead. Again, this image is generated by AI. So if your work can be done by something else, just do it. So when they built that solution, there was no cloud native way to do that. So they had to build the system by themselves. But if you didn't know, now you can actually use AWS GuardDT to scan your files. And I didn't know before doing this project, but I'll just show you how within just a few clicks, they just replace the whole system with this service. So the way it works is you can just go to the GuardDuty console, and on the left-hand side, there is an option to scan S3 buckets. Click on that, enable that, and then you can attach a bucket with this service to get scanned. And again, any new file comes in, it triggers the scan. GuardDuty publishes the results into the event bridge. And also, optionally, you can tag the object back with the result, whether there was a virus found or virus not found. By just this service, because now it was in AWS, it could talk to other AWS services also. So we built a new event-driven serverless architecture out of it, where we could trigger a Lambda function which reads the scan results and takes the appropriate action. So we created 3 more buckets, one for the clean files, one for the malware affected files, and one for the unprocessed files. That's it. Just a simple solution, but we could just replace their whole control plane with this. And it also talks to other AWS services like CloudWatch. Once you enable that, you get a dashboard out of it where you get the scan metrics, like how many files came in, how many files it scanned, how many files found virus. And this organization was using the ServiceNow for incident management. We actually hook it up with ServiceNow and create appropriate tickets. For example, if the file found something, then we could notify the security team to go and have a look and take appropriate action. Or if for some reason, let's say some file did not get scanned, it can go to the unprocessed bucket, and then it can inform the BAU team to go and have a look why the file was not scanned. Now you might ask, why would be a reason that some files are not scanned? Because there are some limitations of this service. So I'll come to that. And yes, there is a Terraform support available. So we could just deploy this whole solution using the code, using the existing pipelines. And we deployed multiple versions of it, like a non-prod version and prod version, so that they can test the changes in non-prod version before deploying changes into the prod. And as I mentioned, this organization was growing pretty rapidly. They were onboarding the more and more applications. So we wanted a scalable solution. We wanted some kind of a plug and play, where as soon as new applications comes in, they could just hook it in. And if any application is getting deboarded, we can just take them out. So the way we designed it is, we created a single landing S3 bucket, and we created the separate prefixes and folder for each application. Now, there was a reason behind using the single bucket. We could have created separate buckets for the separate applications, but there is a limitation with this service that you can have only 25 buckets being scanned in an account per region by GuardDuty. So we could not have like hundreds of buckets lying around. So we just created a single S3 bucket, and we created separate prefixes for each application. And if any new application wants to use this, just create a new folder and they can start using it. So some limitations of this service, that it cannot scan any files bigger than 100 GB. Interesting story again. So when we were doing a POC for this project, this service could scan only 5 GB of the file size. And we were anyways getting the files which were bigger than 10 GB. So we were thinking how we will process these files. But by the time we went into production, they started scanning 100 GB of file size. So this is the main learning from this project. Do not try to solve the problems which others are already solving for you, and try to use managed services wherever possible, rather than building the whole solution. Because these vendors are actually innovating in the background. AWS is improving their services in the background, and we get the benefit if we are using the managed services, out of the box. Another limitation was that it could scan only 25 buckets per account per region. and you can go up to the 100 level of depth. What do I mean by that is, let's say if there is a file inside the nested folders, so you can have like hundreds of folders. That's it. If there is a file after that, it could not scan that. But I don't know why would you have that many nested folders. And another limitation is that you cannot scan any file which was password protected. So if you have any custom password on that, then GuardDuty cannot just open the file and scan it. So outcome, we had the system which involved very less admin overhead, which was robust, which was scalable, and which was cost effective. Because in the previous solution, we had to keep the minimum number of EC2 instances up and running all the time. But this was event driven. As soon as the file comes in, it gets scanned and you will be charged for that. If there are no files, there is no charge. So the key takeaway from this session is that do not try to solve the problems which others have already solved for you. Try to use managed services wherever possible. If it's in your budget, if it solves your purpose, try to use managed services. Question?
All right. Any questions?
Thanks for the talk. Yeah. I'm just curious, what was the purpose of keeping the malware affected files in the bucket?
So it's for the security team. They know how to handle it. Like they want to know from where this has come from. They just don't want to delete it and forget about it. So they want to investigate from where it has come, what it has come, what kind of malware it was there. So they do a little bit of investigation after that, post-mortem. So that's why we had this malware bucket and we had a policies on it so that no one could download this by mistake. As soon as the file comes in, if there is a virus, it goes into the malware bucket, it gets logged. And then only the security team had access to it and go and investigate if they wanted.
Cool.
What was the response time of GuardDuty while
was
sending hundreds or thousands of files,
Yes.
which contains 50 or 60 GBs, right,
Yeah,
each?
yeah.
So how was that responding to that scale?
Yes, so you have to test that out, how it's going in your case, because the maximum file that we scanned was like 6 or 7 GB, and it was in like less than a second. Yeah, so, but I'm sure if it is a 100 GB file, it will take time. So if your system could handle that delay, you need to, consider that.
Did you have an additional job that the AWS GuardDuty picked from the landing bucket, like a Lambda job that called the API?
It was automatic.
It was automatic.
Yes. So if I have time, actually, I can show you. So once you go to the GuardDuty screen, there is a feature that you can enable the malware protection, and you can do other services also. So GuardDuty actually scans the EC2 EBS volumes also. Now it scans the AWS backup also. And for S3, if you go and enable protection for S3, it just asks, which bucket you want to scan. You can pick the bucket, select it. You can optionally say whether you want to tag the object with the scan result or not, and just say enable. That's it. And this particular organization spent so many months just to build that system, and they could do it just by a couple of clicks. So I'll try. I haven't tried it, but I'll try if I can show you the result. See. So this is the dashboard which it comes with. Go to the console. This is the bucket. So it creates this temporary file there once you enable that. And let's upload something into it. let's upload this. So I have just uploaded the file. It would have already triggered the scan. And let's have a look at the tag. So it has already tagged the object that there was no thread found. So with just a couple of clicks, we could just build that whole control plane, which they built earlier and took so much effort and money. No. So this is a default tag which it comes with, and it has a couple of values, like it has detected, not detected, and there are a few more.
So it has, does it show you that it has scanned this particular file somewhere, that when you log?
Yes, it does publish the results into the event bridge, and that's where we were triggering our Lambda function to read the results. And it also publishes the logs into the CloudWatch.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. If no other questions, thanks very much, Bharat.
Thank you.
Aren't you also lucky?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what they did. That's what. Alrighty. So, this is less of a talk and more of a discussion. So, if anybody has any questions as we go through, I'm going to make Jason basically just hover and run around the room with the microphone as we go along. But the purpose of this discussion is we want to get you lot involved in this bit. So as everybody who's been here more than once would know, every month one of the things that we do is the What's New session, right? Where one of us gets up and, we did what we did earlier this evening. We walked through, the new announcements, what's, come out, what's new in Sydney, what's new in Melbourne, all those sorts of things. I'll let you in on a little bit of a secret. AWS, what's new? So this is just an RSS feed. So all we do is scrape the RSS feed, and what we used to do was just pick the most interesting things and stick them in the PowerPoint presentation, every month. About 2 years ago, when, what was it? ChatGPT 3.5, I think, when it came out, we went, yeah, you know what? It can probably do that. So we rolled out the first version of, hey, Mr. LLM, do this for me. And that has been what's generating our what's new for the last two and a bit years now. As time has progressed, I've sort of iterated on it here and there when I've had a few moments. And what I'm going to do this evening is sort of give you a quick walkthrough of what it is, how it works, how it functions, and open it up to the community to say, what do you want from the What's New section going forward? What do you find valuable or not valuable about it? And let's make our agent pipeline do that. If the answer is more of what we've been doing, great, fantastic, right? We can have a conversation about how we can optimize agents and get it to run cheaper and this, that, and the other. If The answer is we actually, just want to know what's come to Melbourne and, updates and Slack of the most interesting things would be more beneficial because we want more time hearing from speakers. Cool, well, let's write a Slack bot and get that hooked into the pipeline and get it automatically pushing, the most interesting what's new things to Slack, every day, week, month, whatever the cadence happens to be. Do you guys want a mailing list? We could set it up to send emails or WhatsApp or, whatever the case may be. The point of this is, have LLMs will code. Public GitHub repos are free. So, let's be a community and work out what we want from this and build it together. So, with all of that in mind, this is what the What's New engine currently looks like. It is broken up into, 6 main parts of 2 different executions. So we have the ingestion part, which are these first 3 boxes, and we have the build part, which is, or the deck part, I should say, which is the second 3 boxes. And it's pretty simple. So you've got the AWS What's New RSS feed. That just sits there, and gets updates as AWS releases new services. Every 6 hours at the moment, we have a step function that runs. And that step function goes out to the RSS feed. Super complicated. Here is one that I prepared earlier because bigger. Yeah. So it goes out, gets the latest updates from the feed, inserts them into a DynamoDB table. It then runs what it calls a salient task. Now, what we do is obviously there are tens of thousands of announcements from AWS every year, right? And we don't want to talk about all of them. Most of them are irrelevant to us as Australians because they're talking about new additions to GovCloud or something like that. So what it does is it goes through each announcement as it comes in and gives it an initial, how relevant is this score? Is this likely something that, people would be interested about, or is it just another automated announcement because AWS has done a thing? That comes into play later. Once it's done that, it then has a list communities task. And this is where things get a little bit weird, but also there's some logic around this one. I said that I wanted us to start acting as a community. If we have an automated pipeline that scrapes the what's new, maybe that's something of interest to the Adelaide AWS users group or the Queensland AWS users group. Or, I don't know, seeing that several of the organisers of this user group are also organisers of the AWS Community Day, interested in the Community Day having access to this. So our pipeline now has the concept of community, whereby we can have different agent personas look at the announcement around, with the context of a particular group within Australia and New Zealand, like the ANZ region, right? So what is relevant to Queensland is different to what is relevant to Melbourne, is very different to what is relevant to Perth. Perth have a very different outlook on AWS announcements given, the latency and the additional network, problems that they've got compared to things that we find interesting. So it has the ability to sort of take a different view as it goes through. So it then lists out each of the communities that we've currently got subscribed in the system. At the moment it's 1, but we could have more. And then it goes through a map state, which anybody who's used step functions, this is basically just where it parallels out. And for each of the ones in the list, do this stuff, which in this case is, look at the announcement and give it a score for that particular community, right? So spins that out once, gives it a score, and then it considers the ingestion done. So basically it's taken the announcement, looked at it, tried to figure out how relevant it is to, in this instance, the Melbourne AWS users group, and written it away. This salient task up here and this community task down here sound like they're doing very similar things. The salient task up here gives it an overarching score of how relevant this would be to anybody, right? Because a lot of AWS announcements is like, oh, Postgres now supports 12.1.2. I don't care. That's never going to make it on the list. So it gives it a very low score. and we actually have a threshold so that when it gets into here, it won't actually give a community score for anything that scores less than a 50 out of 100, right? What that means is that because this is the expensive bit where we're running this once for every community, right? We've pulled out all of the rubbish and aren't running multiple agent jobs against data that we know isn't going to be relevant to anybody. So it kind of pulls out the low-hanging fruit and then we just do the detailed analysis on both. What this also means that we can do is this salient task runs a much, I can't say dumber because it's running Nova and AWS will take offense to that. Cheaper, let's say cheaper model in this salient task. And the community task runs, I think it's currently running Opus 4.8 just because we want to try and make the data relevant to the community as possible and pull out as much of the cruft as we can. So I'm happier to spend a little bit more money on the model down there and just use the cheaper model to pull the stuff out ahead of time. This happens every 6 hours and populates a DynamoDB table. All right? That is the first half of the pipeline, and that just sits there all month, just churning along. If there hasn't been an announcement, it doesn't do anything. If there have been a bunch of announcements, like last week when Summit New York was on, it is churning through a lot of things, and you find out that a 5-minute timeout is actually too aggressive, and you need to increase it to 10 minutes because when they push 80 announcements at once, it can't do it all in 5 minutes. That's fine. So that's all fine. That's all nicely happy. But then once a month, we obviously need to generate a slide deck. All right. So that's where the second step function comes in. And the second step function, if we have a look at our state machines, there's 2 state machines in this account. We have the deck state machine. So let's just have a look. This is actually a currently running one that I was testing before. But if we have a look at this, this is the job for the deck. All right. So basically what we do is we come out and we check to make sure that we actually want to run a task that's got a clock, that it checks to make sure that we're running it at the right time. Should it proceed? Yes, we're good. We've got processed data. We're not going to run it against an empty data set because it turns out I didn't have enough error handling here, and if I accidentally ran the desk step function before running the ingestion pipeline for the first time, it'd sit there and complain about the fact that it's got 0 records in the array, and I think it's called error handling in your code, and Claude didn't do that, so it got mad. So then it goes and builds out the PowerPoint deck. So we've got the sample template deck. It'll grab that, populates it with all the data, looks and grabs the top X number of records for each category. In the RSS feed, they've categorized, what announcements go under what category. Does that, populates the deck, and then shoots out a notification to SNS, which then just shoots an email out to myself at the moment, and goes, I've generated the deck, here's a link, take a look, let me know what you think. 99 times out of 100, I don't get around to looking at it within the 24-hour timeout that notification has, which is why there is an auto-approve step in here, so that after 24 hours, when Matt doesn't reply to the email and authorize it, it just automatically authorizes it. This is here so that one day when Matt's not completely busy, 20, 36 hours before a user group, he will actually get in here and have a chance to, recommend an update or something like that, as opposed to it just automatically fishing through and then these guys going, Matt, where's the deck? And it's like, oh yeah, I've got to go and get that out of the S3 bucket and upload it into Slack so that, we can add it to the main deck. Giving you a little bit of a behind the scenes thing there. But it's got the auto approve step and then it publishes. So the publish doesn't quite work at the moment because I've got to give it updated Slack keys to our Slack tenant, but that's okay. And then it's got the ability to notify if something's gone wrong or, so we had an incident, it was the pre-invent last year. They did too many announcements and it was overflowing and practice ads, and I had to go and create the deck manually, which is annoying when it happens. Like, an automated task works like 95% of the time, and then that one time you sit there and you go, shit, how did I used to do this? This is hard. Like, making a deck by hand is like laborious and time consuming. So those are the 2 sort of step function bits. We have a bunch of stuff in here around the, the what's new agent. We aren't using a gateway at the moment because we can use the Lambda function to query the RSS feed, but there is potentially a need to use a gateway for those times when it isn't clear in the announcement for the what's new in Melbourne and what's new in Sydney. Most of the time when they do an announcement, service XYZ is now available in AP Southeast 4 or in Asia, Melbourne. That's easy. Sometimes they do is now available in additional regions, blah, blah, blah about the service. It's wonderful. Everybody should use it. The service is available in, and it lists every region that it's now available in, not just the ones that it's just been released into. So you've actually got to go into the associated blog post and then work out which ones that it's been released to. So there is a potential need to give this a gateway so that it can then go and browse the web to find the blog post to then work backwards as to whether or not this is a new release to Melbourne, because you wouldn't think just flagging some metadata on the announcement would make this too easy. I have spoken to AWS and they told me that that's very much an us problem, not a them problem. Friends. There's also options in there so we can stick some identity and personas and all of those sorts of bits and pieces as we go along. So this is all deployed in one of our accounts now. So if people are interested in sort of seeing what we can do, coming up with some ideas, I am happy to have conversations with people and give people access to the account. We will have a conversation about exactly what that looks like as far as permissions and all of those sorts of things, because I trust you all, but only to a certain extent. I am not giving you admin credentials to our AWS account. There is also a GitHub link, which I will post in the Slack right now, so that nobody can yell at me for not remembering to do that later. So if people want to go and have a look at the code, it is all available up on no, that's not the one. GitHub somewhere. There it is, up here. I will not hide from the fact that Claude has done most of the work in this. We live in the world of AI, so the age of AI. I'm not going to hide from the fact that by programming I mean I sit there and type stuff into Claude all day, and it does the work. And then you sit there and go fix it. No, I do a little bit more than that, but not much. So feel free to go and have a look at the code. Experiment with it. The one thing I will say, and again, this goes back to what you as a community want from this. The idea is, and the reason that this is built the way that it is, and it's got event triggers each step of the way, is if there are other things that you want to do, we have the ability to hook that in. So, if we wanted to do like a weekly LinkedIn announcement around the most relevant things or stuff like that, we can just keep on building more of these build step functions and hooking them in and having them run at particular times. If there is content that you as an individual might like, you want to scrape this and pull the data out and then look very intelligent in your organization, there's potentially a way that we can do that so that you look very smart and can go to your boss and ask for a pay rise, because look at all of the weekly updates that you do on the new AWS announcements and the things that you think your employer should start doing. Anything of value that you guys can get from this, I'm happy to explore and see if we can do cool things. So come and talk to us, reach out to Jason, myself, Ian, Rob on Slack, go to the the GitHub page. Raise issues, do forks, PRs, anything like that. Happy to have conversations, and if you want somewhere where we can deploy the code and test it, as I say, we can have that conversation. We can deploy accounts. I'm in the process of talking to AWS about getting some credit so that we can have them pay for us to dabble and build cool things that the rest of the community might be able to consume and use. So yeah, questions, queries, concerns, thoughts, issues. Everyone's nodding their head, but kind of a, I don't want to do programming because I do it all day at work. I don't want to do it after hours as well, or no? People's brains are all just going,
any comments?
No? Hmm?
Yeah, you touched on something about getting AWS to front up with some credits.
Mm-hmm.
Cost indicative sort of what's it costing right now to deliver
So-
what you're getting?
There is actually, if you have a look in, no, that's not the one that I want. Where are we? Personal, it's the Melbourne User Group. In the What's New engine, in Docs. So in the Docs folder on the GitHub repo, there is an Excel spreadsheet. If you have a look at this Excel spreadsheet, this is actually the calculations on how we have put together and how I calculate the costs for all of this. And this is where the salient task came in to sort of cut out the low-hanging fruit and the cruft. There is a little bit of an idea, and again, if you have a look at the design doc as well, this will go through it in a little bit more detail. Waiting for VS Code to do its thing. That's all the logic, that's all the logic, that's how it works. No, that's not actually the one that I wanted. It was cost model. That was the one I wanted. Yeah. So at the moment, this is how we sort of worked it all out. The average, so we did an analysis of the last, I think it was 1,000 announcements to work out what the average announcement size was, plus our system prompts and all of that sort of stuff. We get to about 1,000 tokens per transaction. We can then come in here and we can, work out roughly how many announcements and all of those sorts of things, and it gives us a little bit of a price model as far as that. We have the idea of tiering, and one of the things that I've been sort of playing around with over the times, and if you go back and look at our YouTube channel, you can actually potentially pick out when I've used different tierings month to month to generate the different decks. Sometimes I've been standing up here and I'm like, oh, the model shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that was a month when I was using one of the T1s or the T2 pipelines with a lower model, lower verification, that sort of stuff, and testing those out. And then the months where we've had fewer problems is when I've been running the T5s and the T6, which is like a lot of running Opus models and then running verifications against it and all of those sorts of things. At the low end, 75 cents a month, right? If we're running Haiku, single pass, no verification, and it's just dumping it into the model, and it's basically best effort. That does an okay job. Like for less than $1, it does a pretty good job. But if you guys are going to invest coming here once a month to get information from us, I kind of want it to be a decent, quality. So at the upper end, if we're doing Opus with 3 rounds of grounding and consistency checks and all of that stuff, it's averaging about $20 a month, $21 a month. That obviously goes up and down a little bit. Some months they're pretty quiet on the announcement front. Months like this, it's a little bit more because we had, New York Summit last week. But that's kind of where it's, landing. Again, the logic, and this is one of the things that I wanted to make sure we did, is all of this analysis and the thinking behind how I came up with the calculations and, even the stuff around token averaging around to calculate cost is not necessarily the best way to do cost analysis when it comes to models and that sort of stuff. It's a good starting point, and there's actually some logic here. I did a little bit of economics around the analysis itself and why I've gone just token count is the easiest way to do this, because between 75 cents and $21, there is a ceiling as to how much effort you can really put into it, the cost analysis, before you're spending more time analyzing the cost than it is that you're going to potentially save. But at the same point in time, I was willing to put a little bit more effort in, because if other people can learn from this, that's a win for us. So this is kind of a unique use case, which throws it off. But there's also stuff in here around like prompt caching. We do prompt caching, but I deliberately don't include prompt caching in that cost. So that $21 cost is probably a little bit inflated. Our AWS bill floats around the $30 a month mark, but that includes our website and a bunch of other bits and pieces. So that gives you a real world sort of, thing. But again, make it AWS. Any other questions, queries, concerns, thoughts? No? As I say, you get a chance, have a look at it. If you've got any questions after the fact, reach out to me on Slack. Raise a pull request, raise a GitHub issue. More than happy to sort of go through this and get it to start doing things that you lot will find valuable.
All right. Thank you, Matt. All right, I might just... Okay, so now that we have come to the end of our talks, we're at the marketplace section. So is anyone around here hiring? And we do have someone.
One person, it's me. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, I'm from NAB. I will be running NAB's technology internship program from November. There's about 20 spots in the program and hiring will be starting in July. So if you're yourself interested or you know anyone who's looking for an internship that leads to a 1.5-year long graduate program, NAB Star Camp hiring starting in 2 weeks. So please do let them know. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Dan, and thanks to NAB. Anyone else hiring? Yep. We've got a mic down the back for you.
It's probably not as interesting for this group, but I work for a vendor called EG Innovations. We host our SaaS platform on AWS, and we are well architected certified. And we're looking for a sales or pre-sales engineer to join us here in Australia to help us kind of spread the word around full stack monitoring, which is what we do. So if you know anybody who is early to mid-career stage, has infrastructure and cloud knowledge, they don't have to know monitoring because that's pretty easy to teach, but infrastructure and cloud experience, I'd love to talk to them. If you go to the meetup page where you signed up to get a ticket for tonight, I've put a comment on there with a link to my my LinkedIn profile. Come grab me here tonight or connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
Yep. I will say also there is a jobs channel on our Slack, so if you want to post on there and people can have a look up. Cool. Anyone else? All right. Then we'll just finish up with another thank you to our sponsors. Mantel, who is our gold sponsor, Sivo, our silver sponsor. Oh, come on. All the Sivo crowd, I was expecting you to cheer. We have a lot of Sivo people in that were very quiet. And also to thank you very much to NAB for this venue and for the opportunity for their Star Camp. All right. We will be meeting back here again on the last Wednesday of the month for July, the 29th. Love to see you all. All right. Thank you. And there is still food and drinks at the back. Help yourself because we would otherwise not be carrying it.
It's still good for lunch tomorrow. We know from experience.
Yep. So help yourself. Food, drink. Serviettes. There's lots of serviettes.
Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, everyone.